I was fortunate enough to have some time down along the Gulf Shore this week, and I was reminded of a story that I heard many years ago that it just still holds a lot of meaning to me. But the story is there's a fisherman that comes rowing back up to the shore with in his dinghy, and he's got these 4 huge tuna, yellowfin tuna in his boat, or bluefin or something, some kind of tuna. And there's a businessman standing there, and he's going, "Wow, that's pretty incredible. You got 4 of those?" And, yeah. And the guy says, "How often do you catch that many?" "Every day." "Every day." And the businessman thinking about this. So anyway, they go on their way. The next day, here comes this guy rowing back in again. The businessman jumps up out of his little beach chair and goes running over to see what the catch was. And once again, 4 giant tuna. "That's amazing. You did it again." Kind of let it fly. The next day, here comes the dinghy. Businessman jumps up, runs over. 4 more. "That's incredible. How do you do this every day?" The guy says, "Well, just go out." "Okay, well, what do you do for the rest of the day? You've caught 4 and it's like mid-morning. What do you do now?" "Oh, now I go home. I eat my lunch. Take a nap. I play with my kids. And then I sit out and watch the sunset over the ocean." And the businessman said, "Oh, but you can do this every day." "Every day." "Why don't you catch more?" "Well, that's enough for my family. That's enough for me to sell a little bit so I have some money to provide for my family. That's all I need." And the businessman said, "Oh, but you could get another boat, a bigger boat. And you could catch twice as many fish, 10 times as much. You could catch just an enormous amount of fish." And the fisherman said, "Well, how much is that going to set me back?" "Oh, just a couple of $100,000 will probably get you a boat to start you out. But then I owe people money. Then I've got to pay people off. That's got to be stressful." But it'd be so worth it, because you could take the money that you make from what you caught with that big boat, and you could buy other boats, and you could create this whole industry, this whole organization, and catch fish to provide fish for the world. It could just grow and grow and grow. Oh, that just sounds like even more stress, even more work. Why would I want to do that? So that someday you can retire and you can sit on the beach and you can watch the sunsets and you can have your lunch and you can play with your kids and you can take a nap and then you can watch the sun go down. We make things so difficult sometimes. We think that things have to be hard. You know, I know that one of the things that I do, and I know that Kathy does it too, so I'll tell on her, is we, money is kind of high on the priority list of things that we would like to generate more of. And it's real easy for me, now I'm not talking about her anymore because I can't. For me, it's real easy for me to get caught up in all of the things that I have to do to get this going so that this generates money, or I think of all of the reasons why it will be difficult for this to happen. I get caught up in the thinking of it. The fisherman was totally embracing the experience that he desired. And yes, while the businessman was correct, all of the things he talked about would get him to a point where he would make tons of money so he could get back to living the life that he was already living, already desired. Even though all that stuff would work, it would have taken away from his experience of life. And what happens when we start looking at all the reasons that we can't afford something, that we can't do something, or that we look at all of the things that we have to do to get to this point, when we start focusing on all of that, we take away from the enjoyment and the experience of life. Several years ago, some of us who are in the book club read a book called The Way of Mastery. I think that was our first book, wasn't it? Well, powerful powerful book. And in this book, it gave the 4 keys to living a spiritual life. And that's what this fisherman was doing, by the way. He was living a spiritual life. He was living a life that touched his soul, that resonated within him. So what we're all after, if you think about it, what we're all after is living a spiritual life. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do, if your goal is to be, and I think we talked about this last week or a couple of weeks ago, if your goal is to be a billionaire, and all you focus on is the money, good chance you're not going to get there. Because you're focusing on tangible things. But if, instead of focusing on that, you focus on what that experience is about. If you focus on being a billionaire, then you change that to focusing on what the experience is about. And it's probably going to be things like flying from here to Paris anytime you feel like it, hopping on your yacht and going, what does that mean to you? Bring it into the actual feeling, the actual experience. And you'll find that you can have the experience of being a billionaire today. Because to me, being a billionaire is the feeling of freedom. I can hop in my truck if I want to and go anywhere I want. I can take a walk anywhere I want. I can go out here and do what I want. There's nobody telling me that I've got to do this. And I can make it even more freeing if I let go of some of the things that I owe money on. That truck that I said I could hop in, I choose to make those payments so I have that to ride around in. But I could even offer myself a different level of freedom if I got rid of that, got rid of my payments, let go of that stress, and just was happy with where I am and what I could do from there. Hop on my bicycle and ride up to Lake Texoma. We make things so difficult. We make things so hard. But anyway, let's get back to the 4 keys of living a spiritual life. And when you break all this down, and where I was going with the billionaire thing, when you break all this down, it's the spiritual life that offers the experience that we want. The spiritual life is the love and the light and the peace, the gratitude that makes this life worth living. So the 4 keys to living a spiritual life are desire, intention, allowing, and surrender. Now, my good friend Andy gave me this book. I'm not going to ever give it back. And I opened the page the other day. I opened the book the other day, and I always like to just open it, let it fall where it goes. And it immediately took me to this place that talks about desire. You know, it's amazing. I just am always amazed at how this happens. In this, Mary Baker Eddy is talking about prayer. And she says that our desire, well, before I get to her quote, she's talking about our desire is one of the ways that we connect more fully in our prayer, in our communications with God. Our desire, well, let me just tell you what she says about it in her words, and then I'll speak my own later. She says, thoughts unspoken are not unknown to the divine mind. So even the thoughts that you have can be your desire. And even those thoughts are heard by God. We don't have to speak it out loud in prayer form. If you have a desire and you are thinking the thoughts about that desire, God hears them. We've talked many times about pray always. Make everything you do a prayer. Well, this is how it happens. Your thoughts are even heard by God. She goes on to say, desire is prayer, and no loss can occur from trusting God with our desires, that they may be molded and exalted before they take form in words and in deeds. So what she's telling us, to take our desires, to live a more spiritual existence. We have to allow our desires to be given over to God. To let God mold them and shape them, and when they come back to us, we open our hearts and our souls to receive. I know that there are times that I have desired, wished, prayed for something to happen and something to be a certain way, only to realize later on that what I was wishing was nowhere big enough. And when I allowed God to take it over, when I just turned it over and said, this is what I desire, please return to me all this and more. That when I really meant it, when I really released my version of that desire and let God mold it, it came back much bigger, much greater than I had ever dreamed. So the desire is the first part. Have your desire. Have those thoughts. Allow those thoughts to be prayers to God. Pray to God about your desire. Pray your desire, like the pray rain prayer that we've talked about many times here. Pray as if it already exists. But always allow it to be more. Always allow God to take care of that. The intention that we have, which is the second key to living a spiritual life, is intention. It's living with the intent to be the truth that is you. To live the truth that is you with your desire already in place, with your desire already intact. Intention is simply setting the intention of being that spiritual being that you already are, of allowing that to come forth, which takes us into the other one. These kind of all mix together. Because to have an intention, you have to allow yourself to be that. You have to allow yourself to come forth. And then surrendering is surrendering everything that you that prevents you from being your truth. So you have your desire. And we can mix this all up. You can surrender everything that prevents you from having that desire. Everything that tells you that you will never have that desire. Everything that tells you that desire is too big. Surrender those. Give those over to God. Let Him change them, shape them, whatever. Allow that desire to come back to you. Then, as we talked about, this is all about your spiritual life, so let's take it to the spiritual level. Desire a spiritual life is simply to desire living your truth. The intentions that you set are intentions to allow that trait, that force that is within you to come forth. Allowing is to allow it to come forth. Allow God to show up in your life, to express through you. It's all we are is expressions of God anyway, yet as humans, we try to make things more difficult. We try to get those extra boats. We try to add on. We try to get more stuff so we can get more fish, so that we can make more money, so that we can do what we can already do. So desire, intention, allow. Allow things to show up. Allow things to happen. Allow your mind, your thoughts to shift. That you are more in alignment with your truth. And then surrender all that does not serve your highest good, all that does not serve you living this spiritual life. If you think about it, it's harder to grab hold of something than it is to let go of something. So if you're reaching for something that you think is going to make you live a better spiritual life, or a more spiritual life, or something that's going to make you more spiritual or more true to God, if you're reaching for that, that's harder than just letting go of the stuff that's in the way. Letting go of the stuff that's in the way is simply saying, that doesn't serve me. That doesn't serve me. I'm going to let you go. And I'm just going to tune back into love, back into peace, back into oneness. And then I'm going to express from there. So put all these together and you have a beautiful set of spiritual keys, or keys to living a spiritual life, however you want to refer to it. You can use these keys for anything you desire, but I can promise you this. When you let go of the chaos, the distractions, the illusions of the world, and you come back to the spiritual truth that is you first, life gets simpler. Life becomes more of the paradise that you were hoping for in the first place. And if you keep letting go of all of the illusions, you'll find that life is that paradise. Not Paradise, Texas. Paradise. That's where she just came from. It's the paradise that you were hoping for, that you hope to live. I want to close with one more reading from Science and Health by Mary Baker Eddy. And it says that prayer cannot change the science of being. So in your desire, in your prayers, what this means to me is whatever's happening outside of me, whether it be a material thing or an experience or whatever, my prayer is not going to change that thing. But it tends to bring us into harmony with it. It changes me. The book by Tasha Silver, Change Me Prayers, it's a beautiful example of what we're talking about here. She has 50 to 70 stories about how people came to her or she experienced something that the temptation was to pray that be changed. But instead she found out how to pray, change me. And it's a beautiful experience. So prayer cannot change the science of being, but it tends to bring us into harmony with it. Goodness attains the demonstration of truth. A request that God will save us is not all that is required. The mere habit of pleading with the divine mind as one pleads with the human being perpetuates the belief in God as humanly circumscribed, an error which impedes spiritual growth. We tend to look at God as if God is a superhuman. The limiting factor there is the human part. God is not human. God's expression comes through humans. When we plead with God to make something happen, to make something change, we're talking to God as if we're talking to someone with unlimited resources, hoping that they'll find favor in us and buy us whatever we want. That's not what God is all about. So in your desire, connect with God. Pray rain. Pray the experience, the emotions, the feelings. Then set your intentions to live a life that is in harmony with that is in alignment with that. Then allow it to come to you in ways that you have never before seen, bigger and better than ever. And then surrender all that does not serve it. So live a spiritual life. It truly is a blessing that you give yourself and a blessing that you give the world. So let's close today in prayer. Father God, we thank you for the truth that we are divine spiritual beings, that we already live the experience that we desire to live. And the only thing that changes is our expression of that desire, our expression of our spiritual truths. Thank you for the truth that we are spiritual beings first and foremost, that these human experiences are just expressions of that. We thank you for this truth, and we ask only that we are reminded of this truth every day, every moment of every day, that we may truly live from our truth instead of the illusion that we sometimes create. Knowing that all of this is already made manifest and that our spiritual selves already know it, live it, experience it. We ask only that we can experience from that place, that space, that spiritual truth, and express that out into the world. Let us be a force of love, peace, gratitude, light. Let us be an expression of you. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. Amen.